Hey, welcome back to Off the Charts. I'm Lionel Cartwright. Today's guest is the co-founder of Mountain Stage, a radio show that has become an NPR institution since its launch in 1983, and one that's currently enjoying the largest audience in its history. Larry Groce is what I would call a serial creative. From his 1970s top 10 hit Junk Food Junkie to his children's recordings for Disney, to the legendary Mountain Stage, and now to writing musicals, Larry has continually found new ways to express a deep creative impulse. After his hit record, he discovered that chasing fame wasn't where he wanted to invest his creative energy. So he left Los Angeles for West Virginia, where he found a place and a community ready for the kinds of contributions only he could make. That move led to decades of work that not only showcased his own creativity, but created a platform for hundreds of other artists to be heard. As I've said many times, this podcast is all about re-examining what creative success really means. And Larry Groce is a masterclass in following your curiosity, trusting your instincts, and continuing to create in fresh and surprising ways. Here's my conversation with singer-songwriter, musical playwright, organizer, and one of the most quietly dynamic creative forces I know, Larry Groce. Larry, so good to talk to you, man. So many questions I could ask you, but I'll just start with this one. When you look back at your creative life, from Junk Food Junkie to Mountain Stage to musicals and several other expressions, do you see a through line, or does it feel more like a series of reinventions?
It's a series of things. I don't have, and I've never had a plan, a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan or even a 1-year plan. And I've gone on inspiration and instinct a great deal. And I've tackled things that I really liked and cared about. And sometimes, of course, I had to do things, to make a living that wasn't my number one priority, but it was okay. I even liked those. It was not something that I really didn't like. It just was, maybe I'd rather be doing something else. But for the moment, in order to make a larger check that I needed, I would do something else. But I'm fortunate that I have a wide range of things that I do like. I mean, I've made my living only in music for now. It's been almost 60 years. And I've never had I never worked for someone else, to get a W-2 or whatever it is. I never got those things. So I've always been a contracted worker, and looking at it from the business side. But every artist is a contracted worker with themselves. I mean, no matter what it is, if you've been hired to write a commercial or to write something and you're doing something on assignment, you're still doing it with yourself. You have an assignment, but you're contracted with yourself to make these things something that you like, as well as something that fits what you've been asked to do. So I don't have a through line. It's a good question, because I've always tried to do things that I thought were putting at least a little bit of weight on the right side of the scale in hopes to make the world better. So I'm not a crusader, I'm not trying to teach anybody or convert somebody to anything, but I my own self, I like to do something that I feel like it's not just to make me famous or to make me rich. There's got to be some other reason there, at least that I'm telling myself that I'm doing it for. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. But there's a lot of projects. So, sometimes the wider amount of things you can do, the more likely you are to make a living.
Right. Wow. There's so much there, man. The tagline for this podcast, and a big part of why I wanted to do it, Larry, I'm calling it Off the Charts. And it's basically re-examining creative success beyond the metrics of fame or money. And you're just such a great illustration of this. I think right now we're in, and we have been, as you know, but we're in such a transition where I think a lot of musicians, I know a lot of young musicians, I work with a lot of young musicians in their 20s and their 30s. And I think they're all asking themselves, as the old model, and I think what they're really talking about is the hit record model.
Yeah.
As that becomes less and less likely to be part of your story, of your success, I see a lot of them asking, well, what do I do? And I just think you're a study in, wait, there's other avenues to go down beyond the hit record business.
Yeah, when I started out, basically in 1970, which is what, 55 years ago.
Yeah.
That's when I made my first recording and put it out. That was the model, of course, like it was, as you just said. That was the model. You tried to have a hit record, and then that gave you ability to tour and make money that way, and sell records and make money that way, and get your name built up so that you could have, your career could get started, and you keep adding to the hit records, hopefully, and keep going. And I didn't have a hit record, well, and any of my first recordings. I did have one later on, 6 years later, and that was still in the 70s. That was still the metric. I mean, because first of all, there's no internet. There was no way for humans to get their distribute themselves like we can now. You just couldn't do that. If you were a young artist and you didn't have a record label to get your sounds out, your alternative was just make a cassette tape and go to the venue and try to sell them, or sell them in the street. Some people did that, very few, but some, were successful at doing that. But that was the thing. When I went out, I lived in Los Angeles and New York in 70 and 71, and I was not 100% comfortable with the business, the music business. I didn't fit. I didn't think I fit in it. I didn't know if I'd be successful in it because it just seemed to be different. The whole feel of it was different than the way that I was thinking, and because I didn't necessarily want to try to get built up as a star, nor did I think I was necessarily talented enough to do that. But I wasn't confident that I could even do it if I wanted to, but I really didn't want to. So I went to West Virginia. I got an opportunity to come to West Virginia for 9 months on an arts program, and I did it on purpose. I was kind of like taking a step back from New York and Los Angeles, saying, well, let's go somewhere I don't know that's way off the beaten path. You really can't get any farther off the beaten path than West Virginia in the music business. So I was out here and I did this 9-month program, and I kind of connected to a lot of things that I really loved. Later on, I was able to make the hit record living here, but having representation out on the West Coast. And so I did that. But somebody nowadays starting out, having a hit record is like a weird thing. It's just not, that only happens to Taylor Swift and people that sell a lot of records or sell a lot of recordings, however, downloads or whatever. Most people don't do that. There's a handful of people that do, but most don't. Most people now have the ability, to build that career in a way that I think is healthy, because it's not boom or bust. Back in those days, you either were absolutely dirt poor or you had a lot of money. There was no kind of middle class, working person musician. Now there can be. If you have 100, 200 fans in 30 or 40 cities around America who are willing to pay $20 to $40 to see you play, you can make a living, go around doing that. Of course, you got to be on the road a lot, but that's no different than a traveling salesperson or something. I mean, you could do that, and then you can sell your merch and you can sell your things online and make a decent middle class living. Make six-figure living, and be away from home a lot, sure, but still be not that different than a lawyer. I mean, not just a lawyer, but a plumber. Where you're not out to make suddenly I have to be super famous and I have to have a jet and all that stuff. You could be a working person, and we see those people on Mountain Stage. They come through. We have some people that are much more famous and they can play bigger venues, but we have some that for them our venue is quite big and it pays quite well because they're in that the area there, and I think that's really good. Although it does put a huge weight on you, because then you have to become a business person and a promotional person for yourself, or have a partner or a friend or somebody that can do that while you do the art. And every young person, people you're talking to, they know all this. They face it every day, and they've either become sophisticated at social media and at getting their word out about themselves, or they have someone else that does that. And there's also more cottage industries doing that. People who, they're not giant management companies, giant agencies, but they do the work like that, and they do it well. And their goals are not to fill a 10,000 seat stadium, but to fill a 250 seat club. And so they're good at that, and they know how to get those people out. I think that's kind of great. We've had a lot more kind of working class music people who then they weren't really dependent upon these big companies which we were before. And you were at their mercy, yeah. and your first contracts were, you didn't ask questions. You got a contract, you took what they asked, and that's right. You signed it, and you just hope to hell that someday you get paid something.
Totally. I feel like your story is so amazing because you had your hit, as you say, not living in Los Angeles, but you'd lived in West Virginia. I understand you had representation, but there's an aspect, Larry, that's all over your story, and that is you recognized opportunities when they came, and that's something I preach to a lot of these young folks. When I had my hits, I found myself, much like you, kind of a misfit. And in a lot of ways, I was a young artist still developing, but I didn't wear a cowboy hat, and that became the big thing. But I'll tell you this, and I bet you have a great perspective on this. By the end, I would say the end of the 90s, some people that I actually were label mates with, Steve Earle, Lyle Lovett, Nancy Griffith, I feel like they were kind of, and please correct me on this if I'm mistaken, they were kind of on the front end of this, you can have a career apart from having a hit record. And I understand there's exceptions to this all the way back from the Grateful Dead, whoever. But I feel like they started hammering out careers, I don't know, they had built a certain level of a following, but I don't know. I saw that. I wasn't part of that, but I thought, wow, they are figuring out ways to do this. Steve Earle and I were at the same publishing company, so I was really tuned into what he was doing. But it was really interesting to me, right, to see this happen. And what you built was just a natural platform for these kind of folks to gravitate to.
Yeah, and all those people, they had certain things in common. This was before the internet age. They were like then they went into it. They were on the edge of it, on the far edge. Then they got into it, and now they're in the middle of it. The ones that are still going, Nancy's gone, but the others are still. They're in the middle of it. And yes, they created a place for themselves that was really, quite a big and a healthy revenue place for themselves. You'd call it stardom or whatever, of a certain kind, not the typical stardom that you have through country radio and the regular, country music. They don't win a lot of the CMAs and whatever, things like that, but they have tremendous respect from all those people. Why? Because all those people you named are great writers. That's one thing. Yes. They're great writers. And another thing is they're very individual. That you're not going to mistake any of those people for somebody else. It's like immediately you heard Nancy. I was listening to her the other day on something that we had. We're putting out at the end of the year, Mountain Stage. When I say we, it's Mountain Stage. I still work for Mountain Stage, even though I'm not. Kathy's the host, and other people do the jobs that I used to do, but I do some things for them. And we're putting out at the end of the year a kind of a retro best of album from 20 years ago, from 2005. And we have different sets of different kinds of music. And one set has Nancy Griffith in it. And I was listening to her, but I didn't make this, so it's great for me to hear a best of album that I didn't make, because usually I make all these things myself. And I know but this was nice to be able to hear it and hear her voice and her humor, and her whole thing was really so great. And the same, of course, with Lyle, and same Steve Earle, perfect example. They're all perfect examples of people who cut themselves a pretty wide swath, but they didn't do it the way that you were supposed to do it. They didn't look the way you were supposed to look. They didn't act the way you were supposed to act. They didn't, they weren't always on the right shows or do the right thing or whatever. And and some of them, sometimes they were a little bit on purpose, kind of not protest, but they were out there saying we're going to do it our way, which is great. And we still have that today. People like Tyler Childers who can draw big crowd. I mean, Stapleton's a perfect one. Here, he's had hits both ways though. He's had people do his work, but on the other hand, we had him on the show right before he broke big. We had him on a mountain stage as a performer. And it was like, obviously, this guy is, but he was large, he was shaggy, and people said, well, he'll never be. I had people tell me, this guy could never be a country star. I said, okay, hide and watch, because this guy is gigantic, and he will continue to be that way. Why? Because he's super talented, and he's powerful as hell, and he's got a style that will never go out of style. Because part of it is traditional country music and part of it is not. Part of it's outlaw, quote unquote, the Willie Nelson side of it. And then you got Tyler Childers right behind him doing that sort of thing. And those people do extremely well, but they're not in the mainstream of country music. They're not in the, you can call them Americana, call them whatever you want. I don't, those labels to me don't mean a whole lot, but they've been able to, because of the power of their talent. And that you're right that they followed their own muse and really in that way. I mean, Stapleton, first time he was on Mountain Stage, he was with the bluegrass band, Steel Drivers. And he was a singer in the band. And he wrote that song, If It Hadn't Have Been for Love. And I listened to that as a bluegrass song. Man, what is the deal here? This guy. So then I looked, and then of course I'd seen already, he'd written some hits from people already. But I thought, man, this guy, I mean, who's going to hold that back? It's going to be tough. You don't have to be as talented as him, because not many people are, but you can still make your mark and develop an audience and find people that like what you do. And then you can continue to work with those people and expand that audience. We had, shoot, I'm sorry, I'm going to forget names during this thing. What's his name? A huge star, as a producer as well as a star, because we had him as a guest on Mountain Stage one time as as just a guy with a guitar.
Todd Rundgren.
Yeah, we had Todd Rundgren, and think about this: way back there, during the time of the first vinyl time, before there was even CDs. Todd Rundgren went to he told me this in an interview when he was on the show, that he went to Warner's and Sony and these people said, you guys are going to have to start selling this stuff online. I mean, separate from the stores and things. You're going to have to start appealing directly to people, and especially when the internet started. And they said, oh, Todd, that's not going to work. So he himself, he said, I'll test this. And he just put out word he had a following already. He said, send me money and I'll make a record. And they did that. And so he made a record because they sent enough money. He said, if I get this amount of money, then I'll make a record.
Amazing.
And so that's like, that was his thought. And everybody, sooner or later, everybody came around to it. But think about all the people out there now. If you talk to young people that want to make a career in music, first of all, I'm sure you're going to tell them, you better either be really, really a great stylist who can really pick good material, or you better be writing your own material. That's obvious. There are not too many stylists anymore. Kathy Mattea is pretty unusual that she was, maybe one of the last people who sang other people's songs. Now people do it, but they still do their own stuff too. And that's how they kind of make their way into it. And you better be out there playing every little place and then trying to parlay that. Create those assets, get yourself video, get yourself audio so that you can, put it online so people can hear it who have a curiosity about you for one reason or another because they've heard about you. And you can build a career that way. It's not, but then I think, that's what people do in all kind of other businesses. Why do we have to be totally different than every other business where people? So I think it's really, there's a lot of work involved, and I think probably you're lucky if you have some partner of some sort who can take on some of that business and promotional part and let you be more of the creative part. But if you got to do it all, then you got to do it all, and you got to figure out a way to get it done. But what you don't do is sit around in your room writing songs and saying, "I wish somebody would find me." You'd be surprised. Maybe you wouldn't. You've talked to people. You'd be surprised though how many people in little places think, "Oh, I'm really better than those people. They just could come and find me." And I say, folks, those people weren't waiting for somebody to come and find them. They were out there. They were out there doing something somewhere.
Totally. It's the classic J.D. Salinger of I'll write Catcher in the Rye and then be a recluse and let the company be responsible for everything else. Yeah, those days are over.
Yeah, and you just you got to be doing something. One thing leads to another. That's like the golden rule. Doing nothing leads to nothing.
I don't want to stay on this too long, but you bring up such a great point, and that is, I was in that system, and I know the pressure to conform. Well, Garth Brooks is hitting with this. Can you be a little more like that? I'm sure you experienced something similar to that.
That's natural. You're going to have that, but it's never going to work for you.
No, and I saw that. It's like, but I don't want to be. Let me just come out clean here. One of the execs told me, we signed you to be the next Randy Travis, and if you don't want to be the next Randy Travis, we'll find someone who will.
Yeah.
And I knew right then, man, uh-oh, we're in trouble. But the point I want to make is the Steve Earles, the Nancy Griffiths, the Lyle Lovitz, I would say even up through the Jason Isbells, certainly the Tyler Childers, and the Chris Stapletons, who it's very interesting, man, to hear some of the back chatter behind the scenes in the industry. He is definitely, first of all, the industry, Nashville, and I love it, and there's so much great music that's been made here, for sure. But it's more of a producer town to hire a vocalist, stand in a vocal booth, sing a song. But Chris writes, he plays his lead guitar. It's almost like the things, here's my point, and I do have one. The things that become assets for these kind of artists were almost seen as liabilities in the industrial age, reach the masses approach, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like in movies too. There was a time when the star was shut up. You're signed to this movie company, and we'll tell you what to do. And those days ended with Chaplin and Universal and all that, where suddenly the stars said, "Wait a minute, we got a better idea of what might sell and what might be interesting, to put out there." One thing you said a minute ago was interesting to me because I tried like everybody else. I thought, well, maybe I should try to write something that's like so and so, that's a little bit. I wasn't signed to somebody who said that, like someone said that to you exactly, but I did have people that, well, maybe you should try this, try that. And what I realized after a while was that if I was going to fail, I wanted to fail doing what I thought was right, not what they thought was right. Because then I'd feel at least like I gave it my shot. If I did what they thought was right and it didn't work, it's not. Well, then why? I didn't think it would work either. What the heck am I doing that? If I failed doing something I think is good, okay, it didn't work. I mean, nobody else liked it but me. But at least I have that. So I think that's probably a lesson for people. You can try other things. I'm not saying, because everybody when start, you're trying to copy somebody. That's how you learn. But after that, when you're out on your own, trying to make it on your own, just don't be afraid to let it hang out there. And if it doesn't work, go to the next thing. Don't. That's not the people who succeed are people who have failed a lot. That's just my opinion. I do take, like anybody, you do measure some things by popularity and money, but that's not the big measurement in my mind. That's not the main measurement, the important measurement. It's a measurement, and it's not unimportant. I like to make money, but it's not what I'm aiming at. I mean, if I have a project that I think really is really good and satisfying to me, and it either doesn't make a lot of money or it semi does, or it's mediocre, that's okay. Then you go on to another one. And sometimes, as I said, you have to do certain things that they're not your number one thing, but they make some money. So you go, okay, I'll do that. I don't hate them. I like them, but then I can do some other things too. And the more things you can do, like if you can only sing one kind of song to one kind of audience, that's rough. You better be really, 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 really good because there are other people doing that. And if you can do other things, I mean, look at me. I made records for Walt Disney for children. I made him records. I made my own records, and then I produced other things, Mountain Stage and other things that I've done. So I've done a lot of kinds of things, but I liked them all. It wasn't like, oh, now I think I'll go do this Disney thing because it makes me money. It did make me some money, but I liked it. And it was fun. I didn't want to do it all time. I didn't want to become a kids record person. I just didn't want to. It was not because once you do that, you can't do anything else. And so my toe was in the water, but most of the time people didn't even know it was me because Mickey Mouse picture was on the covers and my name was there, but it was like Mickey Mouse record. Mickey Mouse was this, because he's a huge star. I would put his picture there too. If I were Disney, on everything, because he'll sell anything. But I did make a lot of records. They sold a lot of copies and I made some money off them. Not like if I were the star, but I did make money because I wrote a bunch of songs for them. I had 36 songs that were on Walt Disney Records, which is helpful because they sell records and they continue. The first one I put on was 1978. I got royalty for it the other day. Figured that one out.
Wow.
That's almost 50 years. That's like almost like a friggin' oil well. And it is kind of like that because at first you get a lot of money from it, and then it trickles down. So at the end, you're only making a little bit. I did it 45 years ago. What am I complaining about if it's not so much money?
Wow. I mean, to go from Junk Food Junkie to these children's records with Disney to Mountain Stage. I mean, Larry, you helped create an institution. How did that happen? How did you recognize, I want to pour a lot of energy into this?
Well, at first it was like anything else. At first it was like me coming. I told you I came to West Virginia on a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. And I'll tell you something, Lionel, this is really strange. And to me, it has to be some mystical thing almost. I got a call, which I thought was come to West Virginia and play a concert because I was doing that. I was playing, I was playing around. I hadn't had a hit song, but I was playing coffee houses and colleges and what you do, that sort of thing. And I thought that somebody from West Virginia wanted me to come out and do a couple of colleges. And then it was this guy who I didn't know, who turned out to be a pretty famous guy. But anyway, he was calling on behalf of the National Endowment for the Arts. And so I had met I'd never met this guy, but I had met a friend of his who recommended me. And that friend is somebody you may not recognize his name, but he was the first person to have $1 million contract on radio. His name was Kay Kaiser was his name. He had a band, Kay Kaiser and his College of Musical Knowledge. And I met him through a hymn record that I made, and he was involved with it. And so then he gave my name to this guy. So anyway, I said, so it's not just a job. They said, no, they're looking for somebody to come out here and stay for some months. I said, well, I don't know anything about West Virginia. I have no idea. They said, well, come out and interview. I said, well, I got to go east anyway. I was going to do some jobs in Connecticut or New York. I said, okay. So my wife and I came out here to West Virginia. And then I began to think, and I went back to Los Angeles, and I thought, I'm not happy in Los Angeles here with the music business here. So I don't know if I'm good enough to be successful in this business, but I want to do music. So, that looks like it's 9 months where they pay me. They paid me very well, actually. And I went back and I did this program, which I had to invent kind of, and I'd never done it before. I had gone to schools and stuff. I'd never done that. But I thought, okay, let's see if I can do this. And meanwhile, I'm stepping back from the music business, which I did. And I did a bunch of stuff out here. I helped people write songs and help kids learn how to sing songs, did a bunch of stuff. And then I fell in love with the state. And so I was here and I decided, well, this is where I want to be. And that was similar to the way Mountain Stage happened. I had been living in West Virginia since 1972. So it's a decade later, two guys who I had met when I came here said, they called me, they worked for West Virginia Public Broadcasting, and they got in touch and said, look, we want to do a show, a statewide show, because our statewide radio system is going to expand from two towers to 9 towers. We're going to be all over the state. So we want to do something statewide. And it's once a month, and it's like a variety music show kind of. Prairie Home Companion was big then, so that was the model that people looked at. And I said, okay. And I didn't have any idea whether we could do it or anything, but I was happy to stay home, get paid to stay home once a month to play a job that paid well, and also gave me a chance to do what I really like to do, which was turn people on to things that I thought were good. Like if I knew you, and I thought, I think Lionel would like this particular artist, I'd want you to hear the artist. So gives me a chance to do that. And so we did it. I mean, first we could only get people from regional, local people to come on, but I told them, my two friends, Andy Ridenauer, who's still alive and lives out in the Panhandle, he's retired, and Francis Fisher, the engineer. Andy was producer. Francis was the engineer, and Francis had passed on. But I told them, hey, look, humor me. Let's say we're going to do a national radio show. How about that? And they said, they thought, whatever, we'll call it whatever you want to call it, because what we got is nothing. And what we have is no equipment, no money, and no experience. So there we are. So we were, in fact, too naive to realize that we couldn't do that. We just thought, sure, we can do that, against all rational. Sometimes you have to just say, I understand that this is not the way you're supposed to do it. It's not the easiest way. But you're going to have to jump in anyway. Because sometimes people wait. I'm going to wait till the right moment. And they wait forever because the right moment never happens. Sometimes you just got to say, I know the car's still moving, but I got to try to jump into it. You might get hurt a little bit sometimes, but mostly you say, okay, hey, I made it into the car. Now here we go. Now we're driving. So what happens next? And that's the way we did with the show. And one thing led to another. We did shows. And the more we did, the more that we learned how to do it on the fly. We got better equipment on the fly. We got a little bit of monetary backup. And after 20-something shows, NPR came to us and said, we'll distribute your show nationally. Wow. So that was in 85, I think. And we started in 83. And we did one show a year in 83, and then 16 in 83 and 84, and then 16 in 85. And I think by the time we got to show number 20-something, either 85 or 86, we were going national. So that's how Mountain Stage. None of us thought, okay, let's sit down and what shall we do? Let's make a radio show that does this. We just said, we got the opportunity to make something. Let's start doing it and then figure out how to do it. And meanwhile, we got to do it in West Virginia first, which means nobody heard us. Nobody saw us. The local people didn't care. They thought it was fun. It was novel, But then once we got to national, then we had to start figuring out who do we want to be and how do we want to do it. But we had an idea that we wanted to make it a very wide ranging musical show. And without and that's against the rules too. And radio, as you know, you turn on this station because it's country. You turn on this station because it's rock. You don't have a station. It's confusing. The first song is rock and the second song is country and the third song is jazz. You did that in the 60s on free form radio, but you don't do it so much anymore. But we said, okay, look, we got 2 hours. We're going to let it ride and consider our audience to be smart, and they can take it if we follow a blues act with a bluegrass act. They can deal with that. And so that's what we did. And the ones who can take it stayed with us and continue to stay with us.
It's just amazing. A real interesting aspect to this story to me, Larry, is, Mountain Stage didn't just require inspiration, it required infrastructure. So how did you go from, you're an artist, how did you go from thinking like an artist to thinking like an organizer?
Yeah, that's a good question. And of course, they're two different mind frames. I happen to have both of them. And I didn't know that because I hadn't done it. Once again, if you haven't done something, you don't know whether you're good at it or not. But if you kind of like it, you think, for example, if you were a songwriter, singer, and you like to paint, you never did it, but you thought that'd be cool. So you started doing it and you thought, you know what, I'm not bad at this either. And then you start developing that. And that's kind of what happened with me. I didn't know that I was a host I never was a tremendously great host, but I was a host and I was able to make it work. In other words, I'm not a comedian or something that's entertainer. I don't tell stories or that's not what I do. But I knew how to be comfortable in front of people, which is that's the main job of a host. Be comfortable so that the crowd's comfortable and so that the artists are comfortable. So that everybody, it's all about the artist and the audience. It isn't about me or the host, but you can set the stage. You can set it so that they can then, like you're teeing up the ball, then let them drive it down the fairway. That's what you do. So I realized I could do that. And I sincerely liked the people. Yes. I never put, I did put on some people that I wasn't crazy about their music, but I had respect for what they did. I thought they were good. Maybe they weren't my favorite, but I thought they're good. They're really good. Not just because other people like them, but I could see why other people liked them. It just wasn't my thing. So I did that, and I had to keep my mind open. If I'd have put only on people that I really loved myself, it'd be, the show would have narrowed a great deal. Because, and then also I learned to love a lot more things that I didn't even know that I loved. But I was give it a shot. And I thought, these people have a big constituency. I'm not hearing it right now, but put them on. And then I realized, yeah, I get it. I was wrong. Those people were right. This guy's really great, or this woman's really talented, and I didn't quite see it. But I'm going to give them a shot because I'm smart enough to realize they have a constituency, and I can see why they do. It wasn't some weird, they're paying people to listen to them, or some bizarre thing where they looked at them because they're beautiful. It wasn't that, because fortunately, a lot of that stuff is taken away because it's radio. What they look like, what they dress like, we don't care. That's kind of freeing, really, in a way, because stardom in music started being a video. Once we had video, then that really, it was always there to some extent. But once the videos became a thing, if you didn't look good, you had a tough time. And I mean, look good in the way that people want you to look good, So we didn't have to worry about that. We just put on people that we thought performed well and wrote well. That's the main thing. People said, I said, listen, why do you put people on? I said, because they write good material, or they have good material. And secondly, they can sing it well. Now, the band, a lot of people can hire great people. You don't have to be a great picker yourself. You can hire great people to play. And so can Joe Blow, and so can somebody else. But you have to have that central thing, which is the material of the song and the way to, express that song. You have that. And even if you're by yourself and you can't play the guitar very well, it works pretty well.
I think one of the things that's so beautiful about Mountain Stage is by you building and providing this platform for hundreds, if not thousands, of artists, it also, by the way, helps keep your artistry alive. So you get to survive as an artist also while providing other artists this incredible platform.
Yeah, hopefully you do, and you learn. Of course, it's intimidating because then you start writing a song. You think, I can't write a song as good as these people that just were on the show. But you can get free of that. That's going to happen to you as you grow older anyway. You're going to be inhibited because my God, I'll never write a song like, It's Not Dark Yet, but It's Getting There by Bob Dylan. When you get old, you're thinking like, oh my goodness, how can you do that? How can you write a song like that? But it does free you because you learn. It's like going to a master class all the time. And you see, even when people are starting, some people that are young, and you think, wow, and they already have this spark, they already have this ability, and you're learning from them, and they're 30 years younger than you, but you're learning from them. And it's like, okay, there's another way to approach things. It's fascinating. So I always kept my hand in writing things and doing things. I realized after about 1986 or 7, the show started 83. By about 7 or 8, the late 80s, I realized. And it's funny because it's almost like one of those things that I realized I was no longer a singer and performer. I was a producer and host. I could be both, but really my main job was being a producer and host. Then it's like, I don't know if you've ever I had a kitten one time that used to be able to run into a hole behind this. We had a built-in old house I had. It had a mouse hole at the bottom of it, a big cabinet, and the kitten could run behind the cabinet. And one day the kitten ran up and couldn't run in anymore because he had grown too big. They knew that because of his whiskers, so he never tried again. So it was like that moment where I realized I'm not that anymore. Now I'm this. Now, I can still do that, but in order to do that, I have to quit this so I can spend my time full-time doing that. You don't be a part-time. You're trying to make a living as a singer and a songwriter. You don't do that part-time. That's what you do all the time, and you focus on that, and you stay in shape and all that stuff. So yeah, but I have kept my hand in, and later I developed an interest in writing songs for musicals, and because think about this, I did all those songs for Disney. Many of those songs were written for little golden books. So they were written for situations. They put those golden books, made them into book records, and they said, okay, write a song for this little book. So, One was called The Fat Little Policeman. I wrote a song called I'm a Policeman, and so there were simple little kid songs, but I realized this, I kind of like this to try to write something that fit the situation and made it work. And so that grew into later, more recently, doing things that were for musicals. And so I've been able to, once again, you pivot a little bit. I'm not trying to make records that sell, but I'm trying to make something that people are interested in and they'll come see. And, it's related.
Totally. Let's talk about Marietta the musical, or I believe you said the actual title of it was One Vote. How does this come along? And again, what makes you think I'm going to throw some time and energy at this?
Good question. That's a very, very good question. It came along. First of all, I had written 2 other musicals. I had written the songs for these musicals, and those opportunities came to me from a filmmaker here. I had been in a film about a West Virginia trailer park. I had actually acted in the film back in 1991, and then there was people that we have a theater, West Virginia, that's an outdoor theater here, like a lot of states have, and they wanted the man who wrote that film. Danny Boyd to make it into a musical. So he doesn't write songs, but he said, I'm willing to take the script and try to manipulate it. So he called me, he knew. And I said, I don't know, Dan, I don't have time to do this. And so he said, oh, come on, try one. So then I tried it and I thought, I kind of like this. This is kind of fun to do this. Once again, it's like a game. It's like a puzzle. And I'm trying to write things that fit and work and make people entertained. So I did that. And it got produced 2 times in the state, actually several times in the state. Then I wrote another one with him for children because I liked the story. It was a very sweet story. It got me in the heart. So I wrote 9 songs for that. Okay, so I've done that. Well, then later, several years later, I read a book, a history book about Marietta, Ohio, called The Pioneers by David McCullough. And it was David McCullough's last book. He was a famous historian, writer, narrator. He was, very brilliant man. And the book was great. But the reason it was great, it was about the first city that was on the other side of the Ohio River. Marietta, Ohio was the very first city. There were people, of course, living on the other side of the Ohio, Europeans. There were always native people, but Europeans that were living over there, but they didn't make a city. The way Marietta was built was very interesting and very important in the history of America, because mainly the making of Marietta and the people who made it were instrumental in keeping Ohio a free state.
Wow.
No slavery. And think about if Ohio had been a slave state, American history would be very different.
Yes.
Think about it. How many people that fled across the Ohio River from Virginia and Kentucky to get to Ohio, then to get to Canada and hopefully to be free. It's a big deal. So I thought, wow, people don't even know this story. It's pretty important in American history. And I was involved in a theater up there raising money during COVID for these people. And my friend Todd Burge, a songwriter, he was doing a series that helped raise money for this theater. He worked for the theater in Marietta. I came up and we did a thing online like everybody did during COVID. You go online, you ask people to send money because we can't have shows now. So send us some money. Here we are. We're playing for you. And then while we were there, we had some meeting with some of the town leaders. And I said to them, and this is not a novel thought, I said, hey, has anybody ever thought of writing Marietta the musical? Interesting story you have here. And they all looked at me, well, no, we never. I thought, hey, I'm not a genius. This is pretty obvious thing to say, but they had never thought of it. So then Todd and I said, Todd, it seemed to be fired up better. Why don't you go ahead and write him a musical? I'm going back to Charleston. And then he's called me. He said, no, I don't want to do it by myself. So we decided, okay, we'll write a few songs for this. So we picked some happenings and we wrote 2 or 3 songs. And then I said, okay, that's great. That's fun. I'm digging it, but I can't do this and spend the time it takes without some money. That's just the way it is. And so we actually got a grant from the Ohio Arts Council, thank goodness, who gave us money to develop and write this show, which was really good. We might have done it anyway, but I don't think I would have because it's too much time involved, like you say. And I was digging it. I liked it. And then I had the next big challenge was I'd written these songs before, but I had never written the book, the play. So we had to have something to hang these songs on. So I started trying to write some kind of a play, which I didn't know anything about. I ended up working with another person who was a drama person, and they saw what I wrote and asked me questions, and I changed it, evolved it after about, 50, 75 rewrites, maybe more, maybe 100. it turned into a theatrical production. And whether it's good or not, we'll find out in July, because that's when we hope to premiere it this year. But I just liked it. Once again, I love this story. If I can get excited telling you the story of this, I thought, well, yes, I can get excited writing about it and hopefully putting a play about it. And people go, wow, that's a heck of a story, but that's kind of what it's about.
Wow. That's just amazing. One of my other guests was a guy named Wayne Kirkpatrick, and he and his brother wrote a play called Something Rotten that actually made it to Broadway. And then COVID happened.
Yeah, I've seen that, I think.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's a fun piece of work. It includes Nostradamus and an Elvis-like character, all in a Shakespearean setting.
Yeah.
But he said exactly what you just said about how many rewrites it took.
Of course.
So how do you know, Larry? How do you know when, okay, this is it. This is what we're going to go with?
Well, I showed it to say they had one person I was working with, the dramaturge, but I also showed some other people, including my family. And we read it out loud and doing that stuff. And we had a reading of it earlier, and I changed things. But we had an actual reading with volunteer actors, and all those things put together. I started finally feeling like we've gotten it streamlined enough. I mean, the idea was I'm always trying to make it shorter. I go to musicals, and my first thing is these musicals are too long. No matter how good they are, they're too long. Mm-hmm. So this musical, we pledge it will not last over 2 hours, and so that's where it is right now. And that's, I'm hoping we can keep it to that. If we have to cut some things, we will. Another thing is, it's not like, strangely enough, my ego is not tied to every song. I've already had a song that I wrote cut from it. We've already cut a couple of songs, and okay, that's fine. I agree. I don't have a problem with that. And if more need to be cut after we see it in audition, even, I mean, once we get it and we're rehearsing it, if something doesn't seem right, I'm not against changing it, cutting it. I want it to work. I want it to people to look at it and say, oh, I want to see what happens next. Oh, no joke. And I know there'll be some songs that are better than others, because I've been to musicals that have great songs in them. Then they have songs that are okay, but that's okay. I'll listen to those. Oh, that's fine. Then hopefully you get to a few ones you go, wow, those are pretty good. And this story is pretty interesting. And I know the story is interesting. If we can put over what the story really is, it's a fascinating story. And it's a time that, it's a perfect time. This is the 250th anniversary of America. Ken Burns put out this wonderful series of these 12 hours, six shows. Now I've watched every one of them, and they're fascinating to me because it's us. This is what we're talking about. It's not only what America is, but what it wants to be. That's the deal, the aspirational. It's like, people say, yeah, we still have, people aren't, there's still prejudice. Yeah, of course there is. As a human being, I'm not perfect either. I'm trying to get better. And I think our country's trying to get better through struggles, and from the time the Revolutionary till now. And our story is about that too. People the Europeans come over, they're settling, but there's already somebody settled there. So what happens with them? That's a real question. It's not an easy question. It's not a simple thing. It's not like a black and white thing. And the same, then you have African-American people, you have black people. How do they fit in this? And when Ohio became a state, they made, the only reason these guys could sell the land in Marietta is they made a deal with the Continental Congress. There was no president. There was no constitution. This was before all those things. The Continental Congress was the only ruling body when they bought the land to make Marietta. And they formed a company. They bought land from this new country. We knew we had a country. We won the war. We beat the British, but we didn't know exactly what the country was going to be yet, because the Constitutional Convention was going on. It hadn't ended. So these guys bought land from the Continental Congress, who needed money because the war. They were deeply in debt for the war. They needed money. So okay, but they said, we can't sell you this land until we make a law to govern the land. We have laws to govern each of the 13 colonies. They each have their own laws. This big territory out here, which, by the way, the Northwest Territory was as big as all the 13 colonies. It made America twice as big, but it had no rule. It was owned by America, but there was no rule. So they made a 2-page document called the Northwest Charter. And this was before the Constitution. And it guaranteed people freedom of religion, guaranteed them trial by law, due process of law, and it guaranteed there would be no slavery. And that was a big deal because some of the people who settled there were very much adamant about, we do not want this to be a slave area. And they knew that if when they moved there, if they kept it that way now, they would hope that would, and sure enough, it worked that way. In the end, all of the states from the Northwest Territory that became states, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, part of Minnesota, no slavery. But it wasn't easy. Every state constitution had to go back once they became a state and make it so. Any state could have said, oh, no, we want slavery. And Ohio was the first one to become a state. And it was a fight. It was a real fight. And the vote that came about, there was never an up and down vote on slavery, but there was an up and down vote on rights for black people. Shall we give them the same rights as white people? And the guys who founded Marietta were adamant, we have to do that. And they didn't win. They didn't win everything. They lost. They didn't get them rights to vote, but they defeated. There was a bill that was going to take away all of their rights, and they defeated that bill by one vote. And that's why our show is called One Vote, because it came that close. It came that close. If that vote had gone the other way, it wouldn't have been an immediate slave state, but it would have probably evolved into a slave state, because it was like saying blacks were second-class citizens. And there were people there who said, well, we don't want them to be slaves, but maybe up until they're 20 years old, they can be slaves. And these guys said, no, you cannot do this. And one of the lines that I wrote in a song in the show, and the name of the song is called Money is a Powerful Agent, about why would somebody want slaves? It's called Money is a Powerful Agent. And in there, that one of the characters who was one of the founders of Marietta, he says, a person without rights is soon a slave. And that's what I believe. And that's we see that in our world today. You can say, oh no, we're not taking away these people. You take away rights, sooner or later, these people are slaves in one way or the other. If not, by law, they are in effect slaves because they don't have any rights. So, in any case, we wanted to show that because that was really, really important. And it's also, as all history, what did Faulkner say? History is it's not even past. The past was the past. I can't remember this. He did it in one of his things. It's a very famous saying, but it's like basically the past isn't even past. Yes. It's not, it's not that it's still going. All these things, the American Revolution, watch that series and see how much in there is still happening. We're still trying to get this right. We're still trying to figure it out. So anyway, that was to me was so powerful and so inspiring that I wanted to write something that hopefully would get people thinking about that. And maybe some songs too that would make them think about it. Because sometimes songs can do it, as you know. And I've said to me over the years to many people, every great song is a hymn of some sort or the other. If not necessarily religious, but even dance songs, and they're a hymn to having a great time. It's like they have a mission. And if they're a really great song, and I know this, speaking from religion, when you're in need, if you're a religious person and you're in need and you need counseling, you need help, you try to pray, whatever. I'll say this: I doubt if you want to hear a sermon, you want to hear a hymn.
Oh, that's so good.
Because it's heart to heart. It's heart to heart. It isn't. The mind is there, but it's basically, music like that and words together can really stay with you when nothing else can. You can't stand to hear anything, but you can stand to hear that, and it somehow comforts you. I mean, I've seen that over and over.
Oh, 100%. Same. I looked up that Faulkner quote while you were talking, and it's the past is not dead. It's not even past.
Yeah, the past is not dead. I couldn't think of it. The past is not dead. It's not even past. And that's really, the more I do this, the more because I'm writing this historical play, and I wake up one day and say, wait a minute, these are all the same things we're talking about now. What's the deal?
Incredible.
And all people, the rights, people's desires. And it's not that the settlers were going to go over and they were evil and they were trying to, they were trying to just be, we're going to do whatever we got to do. They sought something too. Many of those settlers couldn't afford to buy land back east, but they could get free land out here. So to them, this was like an opportunity that they could never, ever have. And that was true for a lot of settlers in the American West. They took a big chance. It was dangerous. It was not guaranteed. They could starve. But they didn't want to live as subjects to somebody else. They wanted, and that kind of created a kind of character that America has even today.
Yes.
So in the meantime, they did things that were not right. They took people's lands without compensating them and everything else. And you can't argue, but you got to see it from both sides.
This sounds so amazing. How can we stay in touch with the status, or where can we see this? What's happening with the play?
We haven't signed all the dotted lines yet, but it looks now very, very likely that we'll do this show at the People's Bank Theater in Marietta, Ohio, which is a wonderful old restored theater, holds 900 people. We'll do it, it looks like, 6 times next July, like the second and third week of July. And there will be a website. The People's Bank Theater has a website that will go up there at some point once we've confirmed our agreement with them, which hasn't been done yet. We're working on that now. And we'll also have, the show will have a website of its own called onevotethemusical.com. But that, I'm not sure that's set up yet. So both those ways, if you're interested and you see this somewhere where you think you can get to Marietta, I'd love for you to come and see it. It's going to be scary because I have no idea. You write a song,
Sure.
People are going to like it. You don't know till you go out and play it at the Bluebird or something, and then see what the crowd, how they react. You think it's pretty good. Sometimes the ones you don't think are that great, people react big, and you think, well, I didn't really see that, but I'm kind of getting it. So I'm hoping that people will react positively to it. We're going to do our best to make it as good as it can get, for what it is.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. I'm definitely going to come and see it. I have to tell you a quick story of the Bluebird, of a song not going over. One of my closest friends was a co-writer on the Big Bonnie Raitt song, I Can't Make You Love Me.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it at the Bluebird, and it got,
Yeah. Well,
got a
that happens.
very lackluster response.
Yeah. That's why you can't depend on just one thing. That's why, what was it? James Taylor went into 15 different offices and said, here I am. And they said, no, you're not going to make it. And
wow.
And then he went to the Beatles and got put on Apple Records, and then went to Warner Brothers after that. But nobody knows. Not one group of people knows. And that's another thing. You can't be immediately discouraged. You got to try to figure out, okay, what's the deal? Is it really, does it need more work? Is it bad? Or do I need to play it for somebody else? You can't just take one person's opinion or even one audience's opinion, even if it's a sophisticated audience like the Bluebird. It's not always right. They're not always right. No one is always right.
No one's always right. Last question, I want to ask you this. So there's all of these long haul commitments in your creative life to this day. How do you keep the well from running dry?
I think that anybody who wants to stay fertile in your creative process, number one, you're going to be feeding it on the other side. You're going to be reading. You're going to be listening. You're not going to not stop and only listen to stuff that you listened to 40 years ago, or only read stuff. You got to stay a little current, and you got to stay interested in something, because passion is in yourself. It's like passion is a universal thing. You get passion going about something, and it transfers to other projects. That's just like I was excited about Ken Burns' series, watching it, and that stirred me up. And part of it is because I'm seeing times that I've read about a lot, but part of it's because it's so well done. It's so inspiring. It's so beautiful. And the same with you read a book, and the same if you listen to somebody's music. At Mountain Stage, when I was host, sometimes we've always had struggles for funding, like everybody has. We're public media, and we're having another struggle now. But we've had struggles forever. And so you get tired of it. Some of you think, man, I'm just tired of this. And then I would go host a show. There'd be somebody I had never heard of who was 26 years old. And they came out and sang a song. I thought, damn nation, how do they write a song like that? That's so good. It was like once again, it's like a kid again. You're going, damn, that's good. And that immediately kind of cleanses you. Like, I'll tell you a story. I didn't have kids till I was 54 years old. I had my first child. And so it was a different experience for me than it is for a lot of people. And I had a little girl. I had two little girls. And when one of them was like 7 or 8 years old, I was in the middle. I had Mountain Stage, and I also had started another festival here that I was in the middle of. I had 2 full-time jobs, and I was really like put upon, and I was working 10 hours, 12 hours a day. And I came home one day. I was pissed off. Something hadn't gone right. And I pulled into my driveway, got back, and my little girl comes running out of the house. Now, do you have kids? You must have. Yeah, you just had a grandkid. So anyway, and she came running out of the house, and I thought, okay. And she said, Daddy, something wonderful has happened today. And I said, what, sweetie? She said, we got pumpkins. Oh. And I thought, that's the way to see the world. Yeah. That's what it's supposed to be.
Wow. Ooh, that's powerful.
I'll never forget that, because it's like, immediately, it was like, what am I worrying about? What am I concerned about?
Yes.
That's the way you see the world. And you can, even when you're 77, you can still see it that way. It's not as easy.
Instant perspective.
It isn't natural, but you can make it happen. And that's what you're going for.
You've told me also in the past that being in nature was a big source of inspiration for you.
That's another big one. In West Virginia, thank God, you don't have to go very far to get into some nature that looks like you're far away from everything. You're not that far away, really, but I love to float down the rivers. I love to fish. And man, I've sent you some photos. Just, it's inspiring to get out there in the morning and you get on the river. You want to catch fish. That's what you're there for. But first you just stop and you just look around. And me and the guide are friends. We do, both of us. Sometimes we just look and say, man, I feel guilty being out here. It's just too good. It's too beautiful. and we say, he said, oh, it's so crowded. We don't see anybody for hours. And it's so crowded out here. It's really bothering me. But that really feeds you too. It's like, that's the way things are supposed to be. It isn't, we've done things to nature, and sometimes we've done some beautiful things, no question. But when it's unspoiled, it's pretty good by itself. And it does give you some inspiration, and things that you hope that you can somehow, in a slight way, give somebody that kind of feeling you're getting from looking at this beautiful scene.
Absolutely. Well, Larry Groce, man, what an inspiring, creative life you've lived, and it's there for us to study and be inspired from. And as a native West Virginian, I just want to say thank you, man. Mountain Stage alone has been such a great thing for our state, and so healthy musically, culturally, socially. Just thank you, man. You've really contributed a great deal.
It means a lot, because I love this state, and I'm a convert to the state. I'm not a native. Been here now 53 years. But like converts to religion, sometimes we're the most adamant. Those of us who chose to be here, we weren't born here. We see the bad too. That's not the point. There's plenty of things to criticize. People go, "Oh, West Virginia's got," yeah, sure, it does have some problems, but it's also got some wonderful, wonderful people and places that you can't discount. They're wonderful, and I think they're special, unusual. I guess we all think where we are is special and beautiful, but I think this state has some special things about it. And anytime somebody who's from here or lives here tells me, "Thank you for doing this for our state," it really makes me feel good, because that's one of the reasons why I do it.
I always remember in the summer of 71, I was 11 years old, and hearing "Take Me Home, Country Roads." I mean, there was a ton of songs about Texas. There's a ton of songs about, pick New York, sure, wherever. But to hear our state being sung about really did something for us. It really moved us. And Mountain Stage has just done that in spades. So, yeah.
Well, that's what I hope. And it's true. That song, people like it, they don't like it or whatever, because it's anything that's sung a billion times, you get to where you're tired of it. But I'll tell you this, you will not find a more well-known song anywhere in the world. I'm sure there are some Spanish songs that may be known better, but you can go to China, you can go to Africa, you can go to Russia, and because I went to Russia a couple times back before, right after Perestroika with a band, and we could sing that song. We were doing other kinds of music, but they knew that song too. It's so nice, friggin' nice to have that, because it's a sweet song. It's a wonderful sweet song, and it's something everybody. Because you know why? It's about taking you home. That's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be taken home.
I did that song. I played Amsterdam one night, and they found out I was from West Virginia, and they said, "Oh, you got to do Country Roads." And I said, "Really?" And I did that song, and by the end of the first chorus, I stopped singing, and they sang the rest of the song. It was amazingly moving.
I bet you that got to you big
Larry,
time, didn't it?
I could barely finish it. I couldn't believe it. It was so moving.
Yeah, I bet you. I bet you to hear and to see people like that, just because they love where they're from, and all those people were. They may not even know where West Virginia is, but they know what it symbolizes. And West Virginia does symbolize that home, family, more than anywhere else. People are tied to this place. They want to come back to this place. For whatever reasons, who knows? It's not an earthly paradise exactly, and it's certainly not an opportunity to make big money or something like that. It's the opposite. But there's something else. Because it's the opposite, I think that's what it is. It's that you don't want to come here to get ahead in life. You want to come here because this is a beautiful, wonderful place that you feel connected to.
Yes. Wow. So good. So soulful. Thanks, man. Appreciate you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
I don't know about you, but that conversation was a reminder and honestly a wake-up call for me to get busy creating. Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." And in a world where we're bombarded with information every minute, he might have been even more right than he knew. Those quick dopamine hits steal more of our creative energy than we realize. But instead of complaining about it, we can choose differently. We can make space in our schedules, in our minds, in our hearts to write, to make music, to plant something, to start something, to follow that curiosity that's been tugging at us. Life is too short for doom scrolling. Thanks for jumping in with me today. Now, go make something.